Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Caribbean Regional Youth Council's Training and Capacity Building Series Day 1. I am your host for today's session, Mr. Jeremy Batiste. You can just call me Jerry for short. I hope you guys are excited because I sure am for today's session. So the CRIC has organized a dynamic presentation for you guys today with some of the most well-accomplished and experienced speakers that you have the opportunity to hear from. So now we'll just go into the CARICOM song before we go into the opening remarks.
From many distant lands, our forefathers came, some seeking adventure, some bound in chains. Waged and fought through victory and pain. By test of their courage, our freedom was gained. In homage to those gone before us, the heroes of lands in the sun, we vow to join hands and to focus on building one Caribbean. Raise your voices high and sing of your Caribbean pride. Sing it loud and strong, feel our hearts beat as one. Celebrate in song as we rise to heights where we belong. Are stronger than these. We dine, we pray, we love, we dance and we play. We relate to each other, we'll rest in your way. Today as a people united, determined and steadfast we stand. Brand new horizon, the future now firmly in our hands. Raise your voices high and sing of your Caribbean pride. Sing it loud and strong, feel our hearts beat as one. Celebrate in song as we rise to heights where we
Before I get to introduce today's first speaker, I'd like to give you guys a brief summary of his accomplishments and his background, right? So he's a passionate visionary and innovative educator, a youth empowerment speaker, educator, government consultant for the past 18 years as well. He has served in several leadership capacities, namely the National Ambassador for Caribbean Youth Network in 2007. He was a member of the National Youth Council of Trinidad and Tobago in 2009, a government project consultant to the Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister and Ministry of National Security in 2013 and 2014, National Director of the COGOP National Youth Ministries in 2012 to 2019, and International Business Consultant, Orango International 2015. He has worked in middle management for Sprint Wireless in America, traveled to over 20 countries as an international business consultant, a keynote speaker, and facilitator, and has led many national youth delegations to regional and international youth leadership conferences. He is the founder and managing director for his nonprofit, Excel Mentorship and Success Coaching, which is a student mentorship and intervention program for at-risk primary and secondary school students in Trinidad and Tobago. This community outreach has impacted thousands of children and youths, and he has worked with over 50 schools in partnership with several corporate and government agencies. He has recently launched also his newest education intervention initiative, the Excel Success Academy, a full-time online and physical nonprofit and private primary secondary school to help provide supplementary academic support to students and schools suffering from academic shortfalls and gaps in their performance due to the ongoing pandemic. Also, he's a licensed John C. Maxwell leadership coach, a speaker and trainer. His company, Clement Executive, known as ACE Coaching, is committed to adding value by bringing positive personal, professional, and organizational transformation through value-based and people-centered leadership, training, and success coaching services to youth and emerging leaders at all levels and spheres of life. Guys, please help me to welcome the illustrious Mr. Adrian Clement.
It's a pleasure to be here today. It is a privilege as we embark on this very timely, I would say very timely and very important topic of youth development. I'll just ask Mr. Salvery or the chair to kindly give me a heads up on my timer, so that way we can be on time today. Thank you so much. But while I'm doing this presentation today, I wanted to be as engaging as possible. And let's get started in this wonderful few minutes that we are going to be interacting, and we are going to be engaging on this topic of youth development, recently retermed as positive youth development. I want to take the opportunity to thank Mr. Gerard Salvery, Training and Development Board Member, Mr. Kendall Vincent, Chair, Mr. Malcolm Wills, Vice Chair, is it Deverine Rowe, and the other executive members. Thank you for this privilege, and to everyone that took the opportunity to be part of this session today. I want to encourage you that this session today is designed to do one thing, and that one thing is to spark not just your interest and not just to spark a passion to learn, but a passion to reach, to raise, and to release young people in every sphere of influence and in society as it relates to youth work in the Caribbean region. So I want to take this time to get into this presentation, and I am sure that there are many who are joining us today that may or may not be familiar also with the work of the Caribbean Regional Youth Council. So I'm going to just give you an overview of who they are and somewhat advocate for their work, because I've been involved in National Youth Council in Trinidad and Tobago as you would have heard in the bio, a few years ago, and had the privilege of traveling to also the Caribbean Youth Network that started several years ago, and see how we can cohesively come together to bring healing, to bring direction, to bring opportunities, and more importantly, to bring the development of youth. So today, we are really excited for what we're about to share and learn together. All right. So I want to start with a fun fact. And the fun fact is that, did you know that the Caribbean Regional Youth Council is actually one of 28 regionally regional youth forums, global movements, and international processes that is globally recognized. And when we say globally recognized, we're talking about by the United Nations, by the Caribbean, by CARICOM, and other international government world agencies. And it is not just a prestigious, but it's a very weighty responsibility for the CRYC to be a member of this global youth network that is pushing the agenda and the vision for youth development throughout the globe. So the first question I want to ask you, I mean, I know that youth work is important, and I know that many joining us have some sort of interest or passion. But the question I want to open by asking is youth work an important factor in national building and development? That's my first question. And if you can please engage, I would ask for you to just use your right hand. There is a reactions icon on this live, on this event, and you can simply show by raise of hands if the answer is yes. Is youth work an important factor in national building and development? If the answer is yes, just put that thumbs up, all right, and we would acknowledge you. The second question, which is equally important, is, do you think, one second. Do you think that you have a personal passion or interest in youth work? Do you think you have a personal passion or interest in youth work? All right, you can answer the question by giving me a thumbs up or by just raising your hand, okay? I see those hands, I see those hands. Excellent, thank you. Because these are real questions we need to ask ourselves, yes? The next question I want to ask is, do you think, and it's a bit of a mouthful, but the question is simple, do you think your organization or government representatives is doing enough to promote or attract positive youth development in your local parish or in your constituency? Do you think your organization or your government representatives is doing enough to promote or attract positive youth development in your local parish or constituency? Let's see your response. If it is a no, you can, all right, all right. I was looking for the thumbs down or the thumbs up. Excellent, I see those hands, I see those hands. Thank you so much for participating. Excellent. Now, the purpose of this is simply to get a feel from the audience, you the participants. How do you feel and what do you think about the role and the impact of youth development in our several regions and our nations? And as you would have heard, I had the most esteemed privilege, I must say it's a privilege, to be able to travel in several regions, from Europe to Africa to Central America to South America, to the US, and had the privilege of doing youth conferences, doing youth missions, outreaches, doing youth leadership development trainings. And in my years of experience, one of the things I've discovered is that this area of youth work, it is very few individuals you find having that authentic passion. And you'll find me using that word over and over, passion, because that is what has led me and shaped me to do and become all that I've done today. From my nonprofit, my national nonprofit organization, Excel Mentorship and Success Coaching, to my recently launched private school, Excel Success Academy. Everything was designed because my passion and my focus was young people. What can we keep doing to continue to positively impact, to mentor, to coach, to train, equip, and empower the young people who are not just our leaders of today, but our leaders of tomorrow? And so I appreciate you participating in this. To give us what I would call a macro framework of, my apologies. To give you what I would call a macro framework of youth work, I took the time to look at the United Nations Interagency Network on Youth Development. And I took the opportunity just to show you briefly the macro framework and vision of youth development for countries that are part of the United Nations, which obviously impacts and also directs the youth work on the subcontinental levels, from Europe to Africa to Asia, and so on and so forth. And then we have the regional government forums, for example, CARICOM, as you can see on the screen, and all tying into the vision of the youth agenda or vision called Youth 2030, in alignment with the UN Sustainable Development Goals that has been espoused. And so I just want to read it very quickly. One, provides a forum for cooperation and support. And this is generally the role of youth development initiatives across the globe, to provide an opportunity for ongoing exchange and information on the UN systems work on youth development, including thorough knowledge and management initiatives and tools, strengthen and support cooperation to promote youth development through joint advocacy, all right, initiatives and other forms of cooperation. Four, to draw on the members' networks and relationships with governments, youth-led and youth-focused organizations, donor agencies, civil society groups, CSOs, and multilateral organizations and others to advance youth development. And finally, to facilitates and supports youth involvement and participation in the UN system and its programs for initiatives at all levels. All right, so this is what we call the umbrella vision. All right, and then we are grateful for CARICOM implementing the Caribbean Regional Youth Council, which becomes now a voice for all national councils in the different regional territories, Caribbean territories, to represent the unified voice of youth and youth issues within the Caribbean diaspora and context. So we have the vision of the Caribbean Regional Youth Council, a unified work, a voice of empowered Caribbean youth with equal access to opportunities, working together to lead a regional development agenda. All right. And then finally, the mission, how we're going to accomplish this, is by creating a strategic youth governance and advocacy movement. I love that word, movement, with one voice working towards regional representation, integration, and cooperation as a platform for youth development, This is outstanding, and this is very important because once we know who we are, it is very important to know who we are before we can know what we are going to do. And so moving forward to look at the identity, what is the ethos, as they say, the fiber and fabric of the CRYC. In 2011 and 2013, 3 Caribbean Youth Leaders Summits took place, and they recognized the need for a regional body. And this is important to note, all right? And so it was established that the Caribbean, under the CARICOM auspices, should have a Caribbean Regional Youth Council, all right? And our agenda is clear. I can say our, because I have been literally in the belly of national and Caribbean Youth Council development from, I think it was in 2005, I think it was the first UN-sponsored Caribbean Youth Network that took place in Barbados. I represented Trinidad on that particular event and at that training. And I mean, it was very intense. How are we going to have the voice and the concerns of the Caribbean youth tabled and addressed on international forums like the UN annual meetings and so on? And what are some of those issues? All right, so let's look at why we are here today, our objectives. All right, today we hope to cover this very quickly. Objectives for youth work, what we call positive youth development, some definition, terms and processes. What is the need or the situational framework, all right, for the need of youth work? Also, we will look at just a basic, my apologies. Right, we're just going to look at a very basic, a very basic look at the core studies of youth development, competencies and competencies of an effective youth worker, and finally understanding roles and responsibilities of youth leadership. All right, so what is it all about? What is PYD 101? What we would call positive youth development. Positive youth development. All right, so looking at a quick history, and you see it's important to know where we are, to know where we are going. And this is important for those of you that are sparking an interest in youth development. Although the first use of the term adolescent appeared in the 15th century, so 15th century is where this entire study all began, all right? And very quickly, what we noticed is that there was research taking place on the development, the developmental growth and societal implications of what we will call youth and adolescent youth, all right? And young adults, especially the impact in the workplace, the impact on society, and of course, their impact on the economy, all right? And what we discovered, looking at a research from, and we have references here by Lena and Steinberg, they said that they were looking at that the adolescent youth, which means to grow up or growing into maturity, that these youth or adolescents were having an impact both economically and socially on society and its development. And so that was, Lena Steinberg was in Europe. This is important to note, and I'm just giving you just a quick historical background. while in Europe this was taking place, we have the American Psychological Association, Psychological Association by first president, Mr. Stanley Hall in 1904, right? He started to also credit and discover adolescent studies under his presidency. In his study, Adolescence, he described a new developmental phrase that came about due to social changes at the turn of the 20th century. Because of the influence of child labor laws and universal education, youth had newfound time in their teenage years when the responsibility of adulthood would not forced upon them as quickly as in the past. So we are looking at a period in time where there were certain societal changes taking place, especially after World War I, World War II, all impacted on literally global history. And long and short, they were looking at how youths were contributing to the development and growth of the economy, and some of the more so negative effects on adolescents on society. All right. So let's see how this journey continued. Paul did not have a very positive view of youth. This is important to note. He did not have a very positive view on youths, particularly in this phase. And he believed that society needed, hear these words, to burn out the vestige of evil in their nature, right? And many of us are familiar with the adage, the terrible teens. You know, most parents will quote that term because somehow we see a completely different person in our children during their teenage, adolescent, young adult years, all right? But it was simply an observation that led to an entire body of study and work. And so he was looking at the developmental phases, and then in the 1950s and through the 1970s, we start finding more, we would say, seminal work that we would encounter and study if we were to study social work, youth work in our university programs. We start to hear the studies of Freud and Piaget and Maslow being used as seminal foundational studies to shape and mold the study of social work and youth development work within the 21st century, even to today. All right. And so this is Europe and America now coming together with their studies to now create not just academic, but governmental policies and drive certain initiatives to focus resources and policy development on shaping a healthier, better youth for the development of countries. And so I'm going to wrap this up. This takes me now into what can we define youth work or youth development work as. And we have a simple definition adopted by the National Youth Education Center, which says youth development is the process by which prepares young people, listen carefully, prepares young people to meet the challenges of adolescence and adulthood, more particularly young adulthood, through a coordinated, progressive series of activities and experiences which helps them to become socially, morally, emotionally, physically, and cognitively competent. This is very important to note. So it is a progressive process, very intentional process of social, moral, emotional, physical, and cognitive competencies developed in the youth. Within the 21st century, this particular term, positive youth development, was coined by certain agencies within the US, particularly the Buffen-Brenner Center of Transitional Research. It's noted on the slide as a reference from Cornell University, New York, where they ascribed positive youth development is an intentional, pro-social or proactive approach that engages youth within families, peer groups, schools, organizations, and communities in a manner that is productive, constructive, recognizes, utilizes, and enhances youth strengths and their assets, and promote positive outcomes for young people by providing opportunities, fostering positive relationships, and furnishing the support needed to build on their leadership strengths. All right, furnishing the support needed to build on their leadership strengths. And so the focus of positive youth development is really how can we harness the positive strengths and the skill sets of young people to drive the progress of a society or of a country. And this is very important to note. So if we will look at this from a what I will call an ecological level, because even in youth development, there is what I will call an ecosystem of youth development. And this is what I'm going to show you now. This will give you an idea of some terms and some processes in general youth development work. In level 1, the ecosystem of youth development begins with the family. In other words, the family, there's a very powerful quote which says that the first university or the first classroom is the family, and the first teacher or lecturer is your parent. And so the ecosystem from levels 1 to 4 begins literally with the youth and the family. And if we can get that framework correct, even from a macro to a micro level of youth work, you will understand the beginning of youth work begins with a healthy, functional families. Healthy, functional families. Family life creates the framework and is the foundation of all progressive societies, a healthy, functional family life. And so this is the framework, and it pans out from the family now into the young person's secondary interpersonal interactions, from friends to neighbors to peers, schools, and their faith community. All right. And then we go to the fourth and final level, which is now society, where cultural norms, media influences, and the grander framework of how they migrate from the family unit into the wider society. And we see how it naturally grows and develops from there. Once you can get this, now this is Youth Development 101. So I'm not going to go too in depth, but just give you somewhat of a framework to scaffold literally this concept and this study of youth development. All right. Moving forward, as we shared in the history, the work of Maslow, Piaget, and Sigmund Freud, all of these studies, together with Horst from the US and some other American psychologists, their work was literally composited to develop and I will say all confirmed each other's findings and results on the study of adolescent or youth development. And that is from a psychological, philosophical framework. And so Maslow showed that for a healthy development to occur, watch this, the human being need to meet foundational needs, such as basic psychological needs, food, water, shelter. And if these are not met, this is where we have the problems in wider society taking place. If these needs are not met, human beings are preoccupied with survival mode. I'm adding this word, survival mode, and not directed towards healthy development. Beyond this, human beings thrive when they feel either loved, competent, and capable, able to understand and meet the basic requirements of the environment, capable of finding symmetry, order, beauty in the environment, and self-actualization or accomplishments. And I just put a very quick snippet of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, from basic needs to self-fulfillment or actualization. And basically, this is the ecology. This is the ecosystem framework of youth development. If from the home environment, the youth does not feel safe, they do not feel appreciated, they do not feel developed, they do not feel a sense of importance, a sense of belonging, then that youth naturally will, through natural biological development by age, from school to wider society, to the workplace, to wherever, to the community, they are going to be seeking for that basic needs being met in the wider society if it's not filled in the inner home family structure. So building some more basic frameworks. Erickson in 1958, he described the impact of social experiences across the whole lifespan, from childhood, which would be, I would say, from age 0 all the way to age 23. And he specifically looked at this window of teenage, adolescent, young adults. And that spanned the age group of ages 13 years old to 23 years old. And this particular psychological stages of development, which this is Erickson, he developed what is called the 8 stages of psychological development. And we are just going to focus, for the purpose of the study of youth development, focus on the stages 4, 5, and 6, which covers that age group between 13 years and 23 years. So from ages, right, so we covered, I covered childhood as well for good measure. Age 5 to 11, it says that is the age where the battle in their minds is inferiority versus industry. And they are asking themselves questions such as, am I successful or not? Children begin to develop a sense of pride in their accomplishments. So from learning to ride the bike on their own, learning to probably even cook their own food or tie their own shoelaces. These are basic things that are taught, but in their mind, what these things develop psychologically is a child's sense of identity and responsibility and independence. All right? Am I successful or not? You know, and that's why the feelings of shame and rejection are predominantly developed in these stages, or this age stage of young people within their childhood years. The feelings of rejection, feelings of shame, and so on and so forth, low self-esteem. All these things are developed within this 5 to 11 year age group. Within the 12 to 19 year age group, we look at identity versus confusion. This is where now they are literally, psychologists and research have said, the youth is becoming more independent from being interdependent. So they are becoming independent of the family unit instead of dependent on the family unit. And this is the stages where you find teenagers seeing friends and friends' input or friends' opinions more valuable than that of their parents. All right, so does it sound familiar? So they're asking themselves, who am I and where am I going? They're exploring independence and a sense of self. All right, and they are forming their identity, better known as, which you should be familiar with this term, an identity crisis. All right, and then the final stage, intimacy and isolation. As they get older, as they begin to accept who they are, what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses, their wider social acceptance in society, they begin to look for intimacy or isolation. It depends on how they were developed or trained from the family unit. And they're asking themselves questions such as, am I loved or am I wanted? Early adulthood phase exploring personal relationships. Should I live life with someone or should I live life alone? All right. So that was just to give you a quick historical definitions, and framework, psychological framework of how this entire work of youth development has started. But we want to go just a little deeper, if you would allow me, just for a few minutes, to look at this question. What is the need for youth work, the need for it? And I put a very thought-provoking question here, and the question is the problem the pattern? Is the problem the pattern? Now, I can go on for hours on this particular topic here, because this is where in my life's work thus far, I've been working in youth development for the past 20 years, and I have discovered that in many instances, especially in the Caribbean diaspora, the Caribbean region, what we can term from a geographical perspective, the Western Pacific, and then you also have the Asian Pacific, which will cover the Somalia Islands, Fiji, Hawaii. Those islands will also, just as the Caribbean, have been impacted by the transatlantic slave trade. And a very prominent psychologist said just the other day, we have to accept the reality as post-colonial, post-slavery, post-independence people, that we are, and this is the point he's making, we are a traumatized. Hear the word I'm using. These are some terms you have to get acquainted with if you are to delve into this field. We are a traumatized, not just population, but a traumatized people. And I'm going to give you a very quick example as I go into the patterns. All right. This is a report from UNAID, and it shows some findings and conclusions, but I want to just raise one of my experiences with you to give just a crystallized context. And if we look at how we as Caribbean people, how we simply communicate. Now, we know that for those who did communication studies, would understand whether you did it at the CSEC level, Form 1, Form 2, lower 6 and upper 6, or you did it at the university tertiary level, you'd recognize that we as Caribbean people, we communicate on two extremes for the most part. And I explain what I mean. We are either passive communicators, aggressive communicators, that's when we're upset, of course, or we're either passive aggressive. All right. And I'm saying that to say this, how we express our emotions and feelings comes out of our heritage of what we have seen as the accepted norm of communicating or handling high pressure situations, whether in our family environment, in our personal lives, or in our interpersonal and intrapersonal lives, from the office to the school. How we communicate is a telltale sign that inside we have not fully been trained how to regulate, how to cope, and how to process some of that I will call generational anger or oppression, that all of these things, or rejection that was handed down to us through the parenting patterns or styles we receive from our parents and foreparents. I hope I'm not saying too much, all right, because I'm going to pause just for a second, just to get probably one or two feedback from you all, if I am really speaking clearly, because I know time is running. But just to use that as an example, that we're either passive, meaning we allow people to say what they want to us. We don't want to offend nobody. We are passive because we want acceptance in a certain social group. Or we are either highly aggressive. When we're upset, we go from 0 to 100 in no time. or passive aggressive, a very sarcastic, you name it. For engagement purposes, I'm going to open the lines just for a moment to ask if anyone is relating to and understanding the presentation so far. I'm going to ask the chair if he would allow me just to get feedback from about just 2 or 3 persons in about 5 seconds. Just share if the content is connecting with you and impacting you so far.
Sure, if anyone would like to speak, you could simply put on the microphone and engage.
We are just connecting with everyone who is on this live. If anything that is being said so far is connecting with your idea of why you want to get involved in youth work, or you're getting a clear idea of why youth work is important to you, you can just give a thumbs up, or you can put on your mic and give a quick comment. Yes, I see. Is it Isabel Cornwell? Yes.
Hi, are you able to hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. It's Aishiva. Thank you. So I've been relating to a lot of what you've been saying so far. But specifically, I made note of when you said that like a healthy, functional family life creates a good framework for positive youth development. And I guess I can see this, especially like in Jamaica. Even in the community where I'm from, I realized that we think that we're living within a healthy environment in terms of our family, but really and truly we aren't, and we don't realize that pattern, whatever we're seeing at home, it's what we're doing whenever we go outside of that community. And a lot of the times when we're doing youth work, I don't think that young people who are interested within this field really sit down and meds that when you're looking at the whole structure of, you have the family as the first means of socialization, and you go in and all of that. I don't think that a lot of young people who are interested in youth work really looks at that. I think we just think there's a problem. For example, we think that there's a problem with youth empowerment. Young people aren't empowered, they aren't engaged, and we just run in and say, all right, we think these activities will fix it, but we don't really look at the root cause of the problem to try and solve it. I think what we do is try to come up with band-aid solutions, as some people would call it. You get me? Yeah, man. But yeah, that's it.
Wow, that's an outstanding response. Thank you so much for your comments. We'll just take one more. If time will permit, just if you can share in 20 seconds. Yes, I am reading some of the notes as well, the comments in the comment section. I don't know if the chairs is willing to read out some of those comments.
Yes. So from Mr. Bradley Downer, he says the presentation is pretty impressive and you can relate to it a lot. And Mr. Rowan Dawes, relating to all that is being said and presented in the presentation. And so far, it's pretty awesome. So those are some of the feedbacks from the candidate thus far. And I'm happy that they're thoroughly enjoying the program.
Okay, awesome. I really appreciate the feedback, because at least one of my goals, at least one of my personal goals, is to really share some of my passion, and more importantly, to spark your passion for youth work and to get involved. Youth work is such a huge discipline and a huge need for this particular field. And the work that the Caribbean Regional Youth Council is doing and is about to do with this new executive, I believe it will be historic. It will be historic. And we want to encourage as much participants as possible to be part of this movement. be part of this movement because our young people are the future, all right? And we also need more passionate, more caring persons involved in mentoring and coaching our youth, all right? So I'm going to continue. Thank you so much for the responses. Now we're going to look at a report from UNAID, and this report was in 2014. To give you a quick background, this report was done over a 7-day period with a team of psychologists and experts in 2013. And they went into different Caribbean countries and did these assessments. And this is what they found at the end, that there were actually 8 or 10 findings that was negatively impacting positive youth growth and development within the Caribbean region, all right? And so this report was for the Eastern and Southern Caribbean region, not Latin America. I'll give you a Latin America and Caribbean report also in closing, all right? All right, thank you for the notice received. So very quickly, the report showed simply that economic opportunities were lacking. And if you would look at the screen, it's there. It stated that youth struggle with secure jobs because of lack of sufficient and diverse job opportunities. There was inability to access available economic opportunities, which reflects inadequate education and training completed by youth. Youth indicated a critical need for job creation that would not only add more jobs to local economies, but would also add diversity for employment options. And of course, financial resources were lacking, and also youth lacked the necessary social and professional networks needed to secure jobs. Education was the second one. I needed to just highlight some of these findings to give us a deeper context and appreciation for the study. Education, they discovered the educational system, hear this word very carefully, the educational system did not meet the youth's needs, does not address the realities of today's labor markets, and is not preparing youth to be more engaged and productive citizens or to take advantage of growth opportunities and technical areas where they can be competitive in the global economy. Now, when I read this report and I saw this, I literally, I rejoiced. And here's why I rejoiced, because when we launched our nonprofit private primary and secondary school this past term called the Excel Success Academy, we discovered that this exact impact is what was happening. Now, I must say every single government in every Caribbean territory is doing their best. The only setback is that the system is overloaded and the system is oversubscribed. And I'm talking about the capacity and the ratio from students to educators within the system, and the lack of government funding and resources to truly execute 21st century education that is innovative and that really prepares young people, as this report says, for the global economy in a 21st century competitive market. All right, I'm going to move forward in interest of time. The third thing they looked at was crime and violence. It stated that crime and violence basically escalated, particularly because of shortcomings in social, educational, economic, and law enforcement policies. Simply put, certain law enforcement is not being enforced. It's there on the books, for example, in Trinidad and Tobago, as something as simple as wearing of the seatbelt. You know, only a few years ago when they increased the fines for seatbelts, and a couple people got charged, meaning the police service actually enforced the law and gave people, they shot a couple non-seatbelt ticket violations, right? That the entire public got an awareness and a consciousness that, hey, the government and the police service is serious about this particular crime or infraction. and everyone started to put on their seatbelt in Trinidad. Up to a few years ago, that was, unseen. It was very few and apart. All right, so enforcement of policies, and finally, crime and violence increased because of a lack of positive male role models, the growing number of unattached males in age groups who tend to be less risk averse combined to create opportunities for disorder and crime. All right, and so you can look at this report. It's on the UNAIDS website, Juvenile Injustice. They also indicated some statistics there, health and well-being, and they covered that under health and well-being, youth did not have proper access to sexual and reproductive health and lack of mental health facilities. In closing, I will just skip this quickly. This is the Latin America report. I will go over that. Just to give you guys a quick idea of if you want to get involved in youth work, it is very simple. As it says here, you can have a secondary school graduates can pursue this study. We have the University of the West Indies Open Campus is providing a qualified course in youth work. And you can see it here. If you are a person interested in any of the following fields, whether community development work, you're a youth camp counselor, coordinator, or you work with youth organization or youth outreaches as an NGO or nonprofit organization, you can also get involved in these fields. The diploma and certificate qualifications are there by University of the West Indies. And finally, core competencies that you would be taught in this field covers areas such as positive youth development, building youth outcomes, youth advocacy and engagement, effective youth development and planning, youth work competencies, social and psychology of youth, child psychology, that's what I studied as well at UWI, conflict resolution and mediation, and understanding youth, particularly in grief and in trauma. These are some of the skills you learn in these programs at University of the West Indies. There are other institutions as well. And right, I think, yes, I am finished. And just to give you the quick, thank you so much, Chair, for your patience. In youth leadership, I think this is where the Caribbean Youth Council comes in. When we're looking at a leadership level, dealing with youth, these are the 6 C's. We're looking at building confidence in our youth, building the right character values, caring for them during their crises, contributing to their social needs, financial, economic needs, building competencies in leadership and contributing to society, and finally, connection, providing the right safe spaces, whether it's in community centers or other groups for them to develop. So thank you very much for this brief and quick presentation. I hope it was enlightening, and I thank you very much for the privilege and opportunity. If there's any questions, I thank you for your time.